On this one, Luray Caverns. What will you discover?
Good morning, America. Breaking overnight.
Go back to Russia!
Protests at the White House for President Trump after that stunning summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be.
Trump did not back down overnight, siding with Putin over American intelligence agencies, defying his own advisors. Members of his own party called the summit disgraceful. The shockwaves around the globe this morning.
Lava bomb. New video showing the moment a flying chunk of molten rock from that erupting volcano in Hawaii crashes through the roof of a tour boat packed with 50 people, injuring nearly 24. Why were they able to get so close?
Caught on camera. Two masked men lurking outside this home when a car of teenage girls pulls up. The men unleashing a barrage of bullets, shooting out the windows and tires. The suspect's still on the run, what the survivors are saying this morning.
Runway revolution. A model mom making waves, breastfeeding her 5-month-old on the Sports Illustrated catwalk.
Welcome to and home run hero. There it is! The Nationals' Bryce Harper blasting past the competition, winning the home run derby in the final seconds, the crowd erupting, and the man on the mound beaming. His father there pitching to him.
Live in Times Square, this is GMA with Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, and Michael Strahan.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to our house. That's right. It's Tuesday morning. And what a moment for Bryce Harper. There he is with his father. He nailed 19 home runs at the Derby yesterday. And his father was the one behind the pitches.
Right.
And I absolutely love these parent-children sports stories. It, comes down to those teary-eyed moments like you see right there.
Very heartwarming. We're going to have more on that ahead. But first, we want to get right to that fierce fallout from President Trump's summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Protests at the White House overnight and the backlash growing this morning. George is still there in Helsinki. He's tracking it all for us again this morning. Good morning, George.
Good morning, guys. Robin, that meeting between President Trump and President Putin spanned about 4 hours yesterday afternoon here in Helsinki. It may have been the most fateful 4 hours of the Trump presidency to date. Take a look at what happened yesterday. Vladimir Putin committed an act of war against the United States, cyber warfare against our elections. We saw President Trump by his side, taking Vladimir Putin's side. Nothing like that has ever happened before. It is unlikely ever to happen with an American president. Again, as you said, the backlash is already growing. Democrats using words like traitorous, talking about impeachment, openly speculating whether the president has been compromised by the Russian president. You're also seeing, while most Republicans are holding ranks, some of the harshest criticism yet from Republicans, even the president's closest allies saying this was a serious mistake that has to be fixed. I'm here with Terry Moran, who was inside the room yesterday during that press conference, and as it went on, Terry, the president dug deeper.
He dug deeper, and his aides, actually, I think we're looking at their feet and up at the ceiling because it was difficult to watch, as you say, something an American president had never done before. And today, the world is reckoning with it. This summit like no other, as George points out. People are wondering not so much what was done, because not much what was done, but what was said. And here's a sample of the world reaction right here in Helsinki. Trump 0, Putin 1, as President Putin presents President Trump with a soccer ball. And I think a lot of people in the world would say it was an own goal.
Just a few hours after a press conference that stunned the world and dismayed American allies, President Trump stood his ground and stood by Vladimir Putin in an interview with Fox News.
First of all, he said there was no collusion whatsoever. I guess he said as strongly as you can say it. I thought that President Putin was very, very strong.
The president said the summit was a success and that talk of special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation just gets in the way.
I thought it was a really amazing time. Not about that. I think it's a shame. We're talking about nuclear proliferation. We're talking about Syria and humanitarian aid. We're talking about all of these different things, and we get questions on the witch hunt.
And Putin is making headlines this morning, too, denying again that Russia has ever interfered with U.S. elections. It was a scene that many Americans will not soon forget. On the global stage, Putin standing right there, and President Trump just shying away from holding him accountable for Russia's attack on U.S. elections.
Do you hold Russia at all accountable for anything in particular?
Yes, I do. I hold both countries responsible. I think that the United States has been foolish. I think we've all been foolish. I think that the probe is a disaster for our country. I think it's kept us apart. It's kept us separated. There was no collusion at all. Everybody knows it.
The president was asked to choose. Who does he believe, Putin or his own intelligence agencies?
I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be. So I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today.
And for Putin, a question about blackmail.
Does the Russian government have any compromising material on President Trump or his family?
I heard about that we had allegedly collected compromising materials on Mr. Trump when he came to Moscow. Respected colleagues, when Mr. Trump came to Moscow, I didn't even know that he was there. And Putin was asked point blank.
President Putin, did you want President Trump to win the election?
Yes, I did. Yes, he said. I wanted him to win because he was talking about the normalization of Russo-American relations. Moments after the press conference concluded, an onslaught of stinging reactions to President Trump's performance, many from his own party.
What the president said today is not accurate.
The president's comments made us look as a nation more like a pushover.
One of the president's staunchest allies, former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, imploring Trump to clarify his statements in Helsinki on our intelligence system and Putin. It is the most serious mistake of his presidency and must be corrected immediately. And even from the president's favorite cable news channel, this sharp rebuke.
That's what made his performance disgusting. I'm sorry, just the only way I feel. It's not a right or left thing to me, it's just wrong.
Even his former Homeland Security advisor pushing back.
I've seen that intelligence. I believe it, and I've concluded that there was Russian meddling, and there's overwhelming evidence of such.
The shockwaves extending across the globe. One British headline reads, Putin's poodle. But back home, the president has at least one lawmaker in his corner, Senator Rand Paul, calling the blowback Trump derangement syndrome from the left.
I think this really shows people hatred for President Trump more than anything.
Paul used to be the ultimate outlier.
That cascade of reaction, most of it negative, came while President Trump was flying back to the United States. He can watch television on board Air Force One. He was, and getting angrier and angrier, we hear. Aides afraid to go up to the front of the plane. And the irony here, George, is that he came to this city to make a new start in U.S.-Russia relations. There's a lot of business to do, but his subservient performance may have set that goal back.
Yeah, we've only seen one tweet from the president so far since the summit saying he trusts the intelligence agencies, but he's going to have to say more coming out of that. Terry, thanks very much. I want to bring in now Senator Jeff Flake in Washington, Republican senator from Arizona. Senator Flake, thank you for joining us again this morning. You tweeted out that the president's performance yesterday was shameful. I guess the big question is why he did it. Have you ruled out that Vladimir Putin has something on the president?
I would have no way of knowing that. I'd have a hard time believing that, but it's certainly the easiest explanation. I think that's why so many have gone to it. If that is what victory looks like, as the White House said, I think we all like to know what failure looks like in a summit. That was just a shameful performance. It really was.
Shameful, and we don't even know what happened in those 2 hours when President Trump and President Putin were alone. Right. Don't we need to know what happened in that conversation?
Yes, we do. That was a big mistake to meet alone. If the president is as confused as he seems to be in terms of our relationship, in terms of what the Russians are capable of, to meet privately with Vladimir Putin is just wrong. So I'm very concerned. I think that our allies are most concerned, particularly those that border right on Russia. I was with a congressional delegation in Latvia just 2 weeks ago. And what was unnerving is to hear them talk about the propaganda coming from Moscow that plays to about 40% of their population, which is Russian speaking, about NATO being weak and the U.S. being a non-dependable ally for NATO. And then to have this kind of rhetoric from the president just play so well into that has got to be unnerving to them.
You say you're concerned, you say this was shameful. The big question now is what you can do about it. You're a Republican senator. You've been quite critical, as we said, of the president. Many are demanding that you take some action right now as well. Senator Schumer said it's time to ramp up sanctions, said it's time to bring the president's team up to Capitol Hill to testify about what happened there, to demand extradition of the Russians. Are you willing to call for that, and are you willing to back it up with action?
I think we ought to do both of those things. One, increase sanctions. Obviously, we ought to target those who were implicated with the indictments, as well as other Russian individuals. Second, we ought to have the national security team of the White House come up and talk to us in Capitol Hill about what happened there. Third, I think immediately the Senate ought to pass a resolution stating our support for the intelligence community, and that we do believe them, and we don't believe the denials coming out of Vladimir Putin's mouth. So I think that can be done immediately.
Senator, you have a lot of leverage. One vote margin for the Supreme Court in the Senate. If you withhold your vote, you can demand accountability from the president, from his team. Are you willing to do that?
Well, I've used that on other issues like tariffs, where we can look at a defined objective. For me, it was getting a vote on tariffs last week, and we did. It's more difficult in this regard, however. The president, the Constitution gives the president a lot of power with regard to foreign policy, and we'd have to see if there is an objective measurable that we can demand before using leverage like this. That's what I'm looking at.
Senator Flake, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
Robin?
All right, George, we're going to get back to you in just a moment, but just hours after that summit, the Justice Department announced the arrest of a Russian woman on charges that she conspired to act as an agent of Moscow to influence American politics. She is a self-described gun rights activist with ties to the NRA. Our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, has more on all this. Good morning, Pierre.
Robin, good morning. Authorities say this new case is another example of Russians allegedly trying to burrow their way into the fabric of American politics to influence and undermine the U.S. democracy.
Federal prosecutors claim Maria Butina, seen here smiling with handgun in tow, was secretly sent by the Russian Federation to infiltrate American politics. Her alleged targets, according to newly filed charges and intelligence sources, U.S. politicians and political candidates and the NRA. The FBI says Butina cozied up to NRA officials and politicians trying to gain influence. Here she is at a conference dubbed Freedom Fest.
In Russia, I'm the founder and now I'm the board member of the Right to Bear Arms.
And this is Butina's voice at that same 2015 conference, asking then candidate Donald Trump a question about foreign policy.
Do you want to continue the politics of sanctions?
Putin has no respect for President Obama. Big problem.
The FBI alleges that Butina came to the U.S. under the direction of an unnamed Russian official, identified by sources as Alexander Torshin, a former member of Russian parliament and one of Putin's closest allies. Under U.S. law, foreign nationals and others who are actively working to influence U.S. policy on behalf of another country must register with the Justice Department.
What's new about it is the speed and the breadth and depth of penetration that they can get through digital media, social media, and in this case, with a woman sent here. It's a much higher cost.
The FBI allegation blunt, that Butina, seen here graduating from American University, used her time as a grad student as cover for more nefarious activity.
Butina is denying the charges, which were brought separately from the Mueller special counsel investigation. Her attorney called the case overblown, saying there's simply no indication of Butina seeking to influence or undermine any specific policy or law in the United States. Robin?
All right, Pierre, thank you very much. I want to go back to George for a moment. I was really struck by your remarks right after the press conference with President Trump and Vladimir Putin. And, you know, George, there are people who are going to agree with the president no matter what he says or does. There are people who are going to disagree with the president no matter what he says or does. I believe that the vast majority of Americans are right in the middle. They are going to make up their minds on a case-by-case basis. In this case, People from the president's own party are using words like shameful, disgraceful, bizarre. We heard from Newt Gingrich saying it is the most serious mistake of his presidency, and he needs to correct it immediately. Do you think he will do that?
Hard to know. I mean, it's something the president's loath to do. He never likes to admit a mistake, as you know, Robin. But here's what's so important about that. I think your analysis of where the American people stand is exactly right. But there's something else going on, and Pierre Thomas was just talking about it. Even though that charge from Maria Butina was correctly separate from the Mueller investigation, it is also connected to the Mueller investigation. There is a wide-ranging investigation right now into Russian activity, interference in our elections. We saw the indictments on Friday. Robert Mueller is continuing to investigate the president and his team. And what I think after yesterday, the pressure for the president to sit down with Robert Mueller is going to increase even more. And if he defies it, you could see even more backlash.
That's true. All right, George, we'll check back with you a little bit later in the hour. Thank you, Michael.
All right, thank you, Robin. Now to those terrifying moments on that tour boat. Nearly 24 people injured by a lava bomb with a huge chunk of molten rock crashing down from Hawaii's Kilauea volcano. ABC's Will Carr has the latest.
Watch as molten rock, ash, and debris all explode hundreds of feet into the air off the coast of Hawaii's Big Island Monday. In the crosshairs, this lava tour boat. Carrying over 50 passengers and crew. This passenger video capturing the chaotic moments after the explosion.
It just exploded straight out at the boat. We could hear the rocks hit the boat and the people yelling.
Authorities say the boat was on a tour when a lava bomb fueled by the erupting Kilauea volcano went off. A boulder the size of a basketball smashing through the roof, injuring almost 24 people on board.
Do we have any medical assistance? Yeah, hey, we're here. We're right here.
Kilauea has been erupting since May 3rd, destroying businesses, schools, and over 700 homes in the process.
I was able to look back at where I was sitting, and there was a big piece of lava stuck in the handrail right next to where my elbow was. So I know it was a close call.
This morning, with that hole still in the top of this boat, the Coast Guard is now investigating if the boat went inside of the safety zone and got too close to that lava. Robin.
Too close. All right, well, thank you. Now to Amazon Prime Day, still underway, but off to a rocky start. The site temporarily going down for users just as the savings began. Instead of deals, they were greeted by dogs like this one. If you log on enough, you are very familiar with this. Our chief business correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis, is here, has those details. Good morning, Rebecca.
Hey, Robin, good morning. Yeah, you could say it was a rough start with all of those puppies. Just minutes after the start of Prime Day, the site and the app crashed for many. Shoppers were met with these images of dogs and an error message. But despite the crash, just halfway through that 36-hour sale, which is still underway, Amazon is already breaking records, saying that even with those technical difficulties, customers ordered more items in the first 10 hours of Prime Day than they did during the last year's sale of first 10 hours during their Prime Day. Some of the top sellers this year, Amazon devices like the Echo, the Kindle, and the Fire, plus this old favorite, the Instant Pot 6-quart 7-in-1 multi-use programmable pressure cooker. It can slow cook, rice cook, steam, saute. It even makes yogurt, Robin, and it is 40% off. No wonder it is one of those top sellers, Robin.
I have been meaning to get that.
I know, you wanted it.
I know.
All
right, you got to do it now. You got to do it now. All right, thank you. And now to Ginger with some severe weather for the east.
Yeah, we actually have severe storms coming already in parts of the Northeast, and they will be making their way over into the I-95 corridor later this afternoon and evening. Your local weather in 30 seconds. First, the Tuesday Trivia, sponsored by CarMax.
When you buy a used car, you should feel confident. That's why CarMax has over 40,000 cars to choose from nationwide, with prices clearly marked, the same online as they are in the stores. That should give you some car buying confidence, the type of confidence you need to wear white after Labor Day, the type of confidence to suddenly switch to an English accent for no reason whatsoever. Yep, at CarMax, it's all about confidence. Nothing but net. Nailed it. Or should I say, nailed it, governor.
On weather alert for today, be mindful storms start bubbling up around 2 to 3 p.m. today, bringing some heavy rain and some high winds to the area. Could see winds over 50 miles per hour when this line comes through. It's looking like it's all going to be south and east of the D.C. area by around 7 to 8 p.m. But 90 your temperature, feeling more like 96 and a little cooler by the end of the game there, 78 the temperature, but it's still going to feel muggy until tomorrow.
Coming up, how DNA testing is leading to major breaks in cold cases like this new one. Police tracking down a suspect accused of murder decades ago.